I'm with Alvina today, and Alvina, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today.
My
Can you
pleasure.
share a little bit about your personal experience?
Yeah, so I just turned 37 actually 2 days ago.
Happy
But
birthday.
thank you. Last year in March, right after my birthday, a few weeks after my birthday, I was diagnosed with high-grade serous ovarian cancer. And luckily it was detected at stage 1, which is quite rare. And I often get asked like, how come? Because most people, get detected much later. It was just I guess it's weird to say it like that, but I was lucky that the tumor was quite large, so it was pressing up against everything and like it was hurting. So I had symptoms, whereas most people usually don't have symptoms. Um, so yeah, so then I was diagnosed in March. In April, I had uh, like a surgery to remove this tumor, and it was like a full hysterectomy basically. um, which again, I'm looking at the good side of this because I have to. I mean, I was able to afford to make that decision because I was done building my family. I have 2 little boys, so it was like, okay, the timing was okay for me in my life. And then after surgery, I had 6 rounds of chemotherapy. And I finished chemo at the end of September, and so now I'm in like the post chemo kind of recovery phase and trying to like rebuild myself, if you will. So that's kind of where I am.
And so, when you, okay, maybe let me start a little bit more backwards.
Sure.
You said that you had a lot of pain. So did you go, you went to go see your family doctor, I'm assuming first, or did you go to emergency? Like how did that play out? How did they actually come to the diagnosis of the ovarian cancer?
So it's actually like funny. I think back, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. Like for example, one I remember it started, I would say mid-February, that I started to feel a little bit of pain. Like it felt like menstrual cramps. And but for me, that was a bit of a red flag because I'm not someone that usually gets menstrual cramps, and I was like, that's weird. So it was kind of like it was an accumulation of symptoms that made me realize something is off, because it wasn't just the menstrual cramps. It was like menstrual cramps, and then I got my period like 10 days earlier than I usually would, and I used to be very regular, and I was like, that's weird. So it was like two things adding up, and then it was also that it was persisting. Like the pain was persisting, and it was like amplifying. So it was getting worse. And I was like, that's strange. And it came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go get it checked out, because and I think it's important to talk about what I'm about to say too, because I was talking to my circle of friends, and I'm like, yeah, like I really like I have all these cramps, and I feel like weird and fatigued and stuff. And like the circle of friends and family, they're like, oh, it could be perimenopause. So then, which is it's kind of dangerous, because if I didn't just trust my gut and go like, no, I think it's something that I need to go check, I would have maybe not gone. And maybe, honestly, like, scary to say this, but maybe I wouldn't be here today. So there's something about trusting your gut, quite literally, that really kind of helped me, because I still went to the doctor. And the first visit, they're just like, okay, they did the checkup and they did the blood test and all that, but there was nothing showing up on the blood test, because they're not like looking for cancer. Obviously, 36-year-old comes in with cramping and stuff. They're like, okay, well, it could be your cycle, it could be this or that, but they weren't dismissive, which I appreciated. So they didn't make me feel like it was happening in my head, which is, we often hear like scary stories about that. So I was happy that I was heard. Um, because I was already kind of dismissing myself. I was like, oh, it's probably nothing. Because, you're so used to like it's going to be nothing that you just kind of dismiss yourself sometimes. So what they did was they did tests and everything, and then they told me to come back again if I see that the symptoms are persisting and they're not going away, to come back. And I ended up going back a week later. And that's kind of when I feel like this was like the pivotal moment, because the doctor there, it wasn't my family doctor, it was whoever was there. I was like at the clinic where there's like a team. So if my doctor's not there, whoever is there kind of treats you. And so that doctor, I just told her like, this pain is like it's not going away, and my period had ended, and it was like extra long. It was like a 14-day period. And I was like, that's really weird for me. Like it's not, and it wasn't the right color, and it was just weird. It didn't make any sense. It didn't look right. And even though it has ended, it still hurts and it's like unbearable pain. Like I don't understand that. And she said, okay, well, sometimes it could be a uterine like fibroid or something like that that's going on, and it's common, and let's do an ultrasound just to check. So like that moment, that decision that she made at that moment to do an ultrasound is honestly like what saved me, because the ultrasound showed that my uterus was fine, but there was something on my left ovary. And at that time, that's when the radiologist that did the ultrasound said, okay, well, there's something on your ovary. We can't, it's an ultrasound. It's kind of unclear what it is. So let's investigate it further. Let's do an MRI. We did the MRI, and that's when I got that horrible call that no one wants to get,
Mm.
where it came from my doctor's office, and they said, can you come accompanied? And I was like, oh shit. Like you hear that and you're like, that's not usually good news, because they don't want to see you unless it's something major. So I went in, and I kind of like, at this point, it was really weird because, of course, it was like shocking to hear just even someone saying come accompanied, because, it's like bad news. But at the same time, there was like a bit of a relief, because I was like, okay, well, there's a solution. Like there's now we know what it is. All this pain that I'm feeling, there's a reason for it. It's not in my head. It's not just my cycle. Like it's something that we can do something about. So at that point, the word cancer was already in my head, and I was like Googling and everything. So I was like, yeah, that's probably what I'm going to hear. So I was kind of mentally prepared to hear it. And then when I did hear it, I really went into like this kind of, I'm a project manager and like I'm an engineer by profession. So I just went into that mode of like, okay, like who are like, what are my resources? Like who are like the stakeholders? Like, how does this work? What's the timeline? What are the tools? Like, let's go, and I was just kind of in like this mode of get this crap out of me. I was like really in like this, we want to get this out of me at ASAP. And so that's kind of what happened. And I feel like my family doctor at this point is who delivered that news and everything. And she was very much a huge ally in this, because you know she put in the request for me to get an oncologist, but it was delaying, and she called them and she pressured them. She asked me to call, but it didn't work. So I called her back and said, they're not listening. She's like, okay, I'm going to call them. So I feel like it was so important to have this partnership with my doctor to get things moving fast. Um, because, the by the time I was in surgery, the mass had grown from 8 centimeters, which was the MRI, to 16 centimeters. It had doubled. So to give you an idea of timeline, the MRI was done on the 28th of March and the surgery was on the 20th of April. So it wasn't even a full month yet, and it doubled. So it's like, can you imagine if there was that delay? Like it would have probably burst and like spread. So that's the only reason I think that it was, it came out when it was at stage 1, because if it would have burst, it would have spread, right? So yeah, it's like, I think for me it was really I'm like that success story, I find, of like doctors listening to their patients and showing up for them and building that partnership. And that's also why I'm so passionate about, doing things like this, because I feel like it is possible if the right things are done. One, the patient, like trust yourself and, listen to your gut and advocate for yourself, talk about it, don't second guess. But also, second, it's the doctors listening and actually advocating for you. So it's like creating that partnership is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you mentioned a couple of things I really want to talk to you about, but I think that that is so important because that's not generally what happens when a woman is in a doctor's office, and often it'll be like, oh, maybe it's perimenopause, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that. Don't be too concerned. And I've heard that a lot as I've been talking to women who have been diagnosed with cancer. So I think that that is a really important thing that needs to start.
Especially when it's like our, when it's related to our reproductive system, like cancers, like gynecological cancers, because they can create symptoms that are so elusive.
Mhm.
It can be like, oh, it's your stomach, it's this, it's that, like you said, it could be so many things. And it's not, like it's not, the fault of the health professional either. These cancers are very elusive, but I think it's important for the patient to really listen to their gut and push if they really think that, no, that's not it. I don't feel like that's it. Push, and for the professional to then listen to that
Mhm.
instinctive messaging that's going on inside of that patient. Like there's a reason why they're getting those signals, if you will, from their body,
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I want to bring up and I want to talk to you about because I think that that is the really important part. And what I've heard again in the conversations that I've had throughout the week is that, and yourself, as a mom of two young boys, I think you said, you're busy, you have a family, you have a job,
Yeah.
you have children, you have things to
Yeah.
do. And
Life
so
is like running. you
yeah,
know?
exactly. And so, you don't have the time to be sick, which is what I heard a lot. And so the
Yeah.
fact that you didn't dismiss yourself is what you
Yeah.
said. And
Yeah.
what I heard from other people that I spoke to is that they did dismiss themselves because either their healthcare professional told them that, it was nothing, you're overreacting or whatever, or because they felt like they had too much stuff to do to take the time to take care of themselves. So I think that that's a really important point that you brought up. So you were talking about how, with your friends, they were saying, "Oh, it's probably perimenopause," but you're still at 36. It's a little too young to be talking
Yeah.
about perimenopause, and it's possible that it happens, but it's unusual. And so even if
Yeah.
you are starting perimenopause at such a young age, it should be an alarm bell, and you should be getting it checked out because 36 is
Yeah.
is still too young. So I think that
Yeah.
those are really important things that you brought
I
up.
think for me, like the biggest thing that it kind of confirmed is like knowing what your normal is and then basing it off that. Like other people's normal is different, but my normal was, other people get cramps. Like I think my sister and my cousins, they often get cramps. It's normal for them to get cramps during the period, but it's not normal for me. So it's like to not compare our bodies to how other people's bodies react because it's a totally different system. It's like, so it was like that was the main piece for me to be like, yeah, people get cramps, but I don't. People get periods here and there, but I don't. Or like I was very consistent in my cycle. So I was like everything was off, the timing, the even like visually the way it looked. I was like, that does not look right. It was just so many signals. So it was like it was the sum of these flags that was like something is wrong. Go get yourself checked. This is not normal. And because the intensity of the pain was increasing, not decreasing, like usually if it wasn't a menstrual cycle thing, well, it should go up and then down and go away, right? That pain should go away, but it wasn't. So I was like, don't mess around with it. Something is happening. I didn't think cancer. I thought maybe like something with my uterus. And what's crazy is that the pain was coming from my uterus. Like I really felt like it was my uterus or my bladder, like that middle section area, right? And I was like so shocked to see then the MRI because so this is my pelvis. My uterus should be here. It was like that because the mass was here and it was like squishing everything. And so my uterus was being shoved to the side. So that pain I was feeling was actually quite like what they called a mechanical pain. It's because the uterus was hurting because it was being like stretched out and being put into an uncomfortable position. The ovary never hurt, you know. It wasn't the ovary that was hurting. So that's why I'm lucky that like the mass was so big and didn't explode to the point that, could have spread, that it was encapsulated, but it was big enough that it caused pain to the uterus, which then sent me to go get checked and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
And so when you went to do, or when they told you you needed a full hysterectomy,
Mhm.
did anybody at that point say to you, and I mean, I would imagine that they already had your history, so they might have already known that you had a family, but did anybody ask you if you were okay with that?
Yeah, so, like, I don't know, like, I don't wanna make it sound like a, a thing. Well, I feel like it is. I feel like all of the people that treated me were women, so I feel like that had a huge factor. My family doctor is a woman. The doctor that saw me that isn't my doctor, but said, "Hey, let's go get an ultrasound," that was a woman, and then my family doctor is a woman, and my oncologist is a woman. So, like, I had a team of women treating me. So, I feel like it helped me because if I tell you and you have a uterus and I say I'm having cramps, you can actually imagine how that might feel. Whereas, a male doctor knows it intellectually, but doesn't know it like somatically in their body how that could feel. So it's like I feel like being able to relate to my physician who has maybe had cramps in her life. I could actually talk to her about like, yeah, it's like that cramp, but crank up the volume, and they could imagine that feeling. So
Mhm.
for me, it was part of the recipe of success, which is, I shy away from saying that because I'm not saying that all male doctors are bad. That's not what I say. But I feel like it was a factor in them being compassionate and understanding where I was at
Mhm.
because it's a gynecological cancer.
Yeah.
So that being said, my oncologist, again, I really lucked out with this journey because she is a gem to the point that I've said to her multiple times that she needs to go do like training to like other oncologists because I've heard horror stories of how it was even announced to people like you have cancer and that's it, like plain and simple. Whereas for me, like the first encounter was she came to the room, she said hello, and one of the first things that came out of her mouth was, before I tell you like why you're here and everything, I would like to ask you, what do you know? Like, what do you know about what's going on? What have you heard so far? What have you been told? Like, tell me what you know, and then we'll take it from there. So I love that because she was ready to meet me where I was at as the person in front of her and not just like dump all this information onto me, right? And then with that process, then she started asking questions, and because I told her yes, I was aware and all that. Then we went into the, okay, what now? What do we do? And that's kind of where she was like, okay, look, there's some options. At this point, we don't know if it's cancer. We just have images. We hadn't done a biopsy, and there's no time to do a biopsy. And I think also the type of mass it is, you usually don't do biopsies on it because you are actually gonna create a problem if you poke at it and it's gonna just like leak and stuff, and you don't want to mess around. It's not like a hard ball tumor. It's like a gelatinous type of tumor. Um, so she just said like, you know, we just have images, but given your age and the statistics of this type of cancer, there's a bit of a chance that it's just borderline. And so if it's borderline, here's what we can do in terms of the hysterectomy. And do we leave the other ovary in or not? Do we just remove the uterus and or maybe leave the uterus and just remove the affected ovary and the mass? Or if we find out that it is cancer, like during surgery, they're able to check if it is cancerous or not. So like while I'm in surgery and like open, they're able to send like a chunk of the tumor and get it checked for yes, it's cancer or not, and then decide what to do. So I love that she sat down with me before surgery and went option A, option B, option C. And we kind of built a plan, like a if then type of plan of if this happens, we'll do this. If that happens, we'll do this. And I feel like it was a really, again, it felt like a partnership. It wasn't just her telling me that this is what's going to happen to you. And it also, what it did was that when I did wake up from after surgery, when I woke up, I asked her so, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it was cancerous." I wasn't in shock that I just had a full hysterectomy and most of my ovaries were gone. I knew what that meant before going into it. That hey, there's a pretty high chance that there will be a full hysterectomy where the ovaries will be removed too, and that means that I'll be in surgical menopause. So yeah, so it was. I was informed like quite well, I find, compared to what I've realized after sharing notes with other patients, especially ovarian cancer patients, that it's not the same and not all hospitals can actually offer that plan A, plan B thing where they can check the um the tumor during surgery. So sometimes they have to go in for another surgery after the biopsy. So it's like I feel like I was just very lucky and I was at the right place at the right time with the right people. Yeah, so I feel like it's important to share this. Like, it's possible. Look, my case. It's one of those cases that like, I hope to see more of and hear more stories like this.
Yeah, your oncologist does sound pretty amazing, and I agree. I think she should be training other
Yeah, she
oncologists.
please
So.
like need to do some training. Like I'm telling you, I'm hearing all these stories, and she was just like, "Oh my God, you're so sweet." I'm like, "No, I'm not just saying that to be sweet. I'm telling you, like you don't understand. Like not
Yeah,
everybody has this bedside manner,
yeah.
unfortunately." Yeah,
And I think especially because when we're talking about gynecological cancers, it's like it we're very vulnerable in a position where
yeah,
like there are all these doctors in our lady parts, and like
yeah,
so
yeah,
I think that that's really important.
yeah, and I think it's like something really important, especially with ovarian cancer, is that the median age of people who are typically diagnosed, it's much older. It's like in the 60s. And so I could have easily been dismissed. Like nobody would have ever guessed that's ovarian cancer. So just like the fact that they didn't dismiss me and didn't just say like, oh, it's nothing, it's probably this, it's probably that. Nobody was talking like that. Like even my oncologist, when she said it could be borderline, she was very clear. She was like, there's only a 15% chance, but I'm just sharing with you to, hopefully it's that, but it's probably not that, but maybe hopefully let's hope it is. So like she kept hope, but she was also realistic. So it's like she
Mhm.
wasn't completely like sending me in like the pits of doom, but
On your
also
own.
was realistic with the hope that she was giving me. Just enough to keep my head above water, but not like in an unrealistic way.
Yeah. She sounds really amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
I so because not everybody is gonna have an oncologist like that. And
yeah,
again, because it is a very vulnerable
mhm,
cancer to have, like what strategies or approaches would you say to these other women who don't have that
yeah.
support team?
I think it's so important, like, to be prepared, um, with questions of and know, like, really, like, ask yourself the question first, like, "How much do I wanna know?" Because not everybody's like me. I'm, like, big, nerd, and, like, I wanted to know the science of it. I wanted to know everything about it, because that was my way of feeling in control of the situation. I was like, I want to inform myself. But not everybody feels comfortable doing that. So I think that's important to know this piece. Like, how much do I want to know? And if I don't want to know much, well, someone else should know. So I should bring somebody that can handle it. So a partner, a friend, someone that could be the note taker and absorb that technical information a bit more. So that once I'm out of the office, like I can kind of take the time I need to absorb it, explore it, whatever, to equip myself with the questions I need to ask next time or ask other people who've been through it. Like, hey, I'm going through this right now. What should I do? Because I think one of the things is that it can be a very lonely journey if you don't do these things. Because especially with more rare cancers like ovarian, I had to find Ovarian Cancer Canada myself. Like no one told me like, here's an organization. I had to do the research myself. But I know that a lot of people don't want to do that. Like they don't want to type ovarian cancer on Google because it'll 10,000 links will come up and scary data and stats and stuff. So I get that. So I think one, it's prepare yourself with questions, and if you can't handle the answers of those, bring someone with you who can, and leave the room if you need to. But be like, hey, this is my person. Like I've told them, here are the questions. Please like have that conversation, but I can't hear this stuff, and that's okay. Like that's okay. But don't let fear allow you to like miss out on the self advocacy piece because that's really important. But if you can't do it, have an ally that will do it for you. But
Yeah.
don't miss out on that.
Yeah, that's such great advice, Alvina. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I mean, you said a lot of things that I think could be the answer to this next question, but
Okay.
I just want to be able to ask you the
Yeah, sure.
question so that people know that this
Yeah,
is
I
what
get
they
it.
should be doing. So what is your advice for the healthcare workforce when it comes to these I mean not just women specific cancers, but
Mhm.
when a woman is in front of you with a cancer, what is your advice to the healthcare professionals?
I think I really like absolutely loved my oncologist approach. So it depends like where you are. Like if you're in that beginning stage when you're going to, you have symptoms and you're going to the doctor for the first time, like you're not at the oncologist yet, I think that it's important to just hear the patients out. Just hear them, trust that this person in front of you, they live in their body. So if they're getting some kind of signaling that's telling them something is off, like trust your patient as the spokesperson of their physical self, you know? And yeah, sometimes it could be something else going on. It could be anxiety or other things creating, like psychosomatic symptoms. Okay, so what? But if in 100 cases of it was just a psychosomatic reaction, you can save one life, it's worth the time. Like it's worth the time that you spent there. So it's not a waste of time. And even if it is psychosomatic, I feel like that's still important to explore. Like, why is that happening? What's going on? It's another health issue. It's still a mental health issue, right? It doesn't mean like mental health is still health. So either way, I feel like it is a health issue when someone comes to you, whether those symptoms are because of a serious, like something like cancer or something that's maybe not as serious, but still a health issue though. So I don't think it's wasted time, right? Um, and then if you're at the oncologist phase where you're going to the oncologist first time, I think it's so important, like so important for oncologists to realize that for them, as an expert, as a specialist that works around the word cancer every day, all day, and that the word cancer is almost like desensitized for them a little bit because it's just part of their job, right? To realize it's like that for them, but not for the person that's going to walk into your office for the first time. They have never associated the word cancer to themselves ever in their life before. It's traumatizing, it's shocking. So please don't blurt out, sorry, you have cancer. That's too much. It's a small sentence, but it has so much weight. Like it's too much, right? So I think the best approach is really to do what my oncologist did, which is ask the patient, where are they at? What do they know? How much do they want to know? Are they able to handle, this type of information? Do they have a person? Because sometimes maybe that first encounter, they don't have somebody with them. So I think it's a place to establish the relationship first and to kind of assess where's your patient at. Can they receive this information right now? So I mean, I think that's important to meet your patient where they're at is like my number one request to the medical community.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about your blue pin?
So say that again.
Your blue pin?
Oh yeah, so this is actually it's supposed to be teal, so it's hard to see maybe in the light, but it's
Oh,
like a teal turquoise. So that's actually the ovarian cancer ribbon. And I think it's also the ribbon for like most gynecological cancers, I think, because I've seen it for cervical cancer as well. So yeah, I whenever I'm doing something like this, I wear this pin or I try to wear some teal just because it's one of the rarer cancers and not enough people hear about it, and it's also quite an underfunded cancer in terms of research. Um, Even though we were talking about it offline, it's part of the BRCA family, and so even the treatment of ovarian cancer is very similar to breast cancer in terms of chemotherapy. But the thing is, the stats of ovarian cancer are not the best, and they haven't changed in like the last like 50 years. So to give you an example, only like 15% of cases get detected at stage one. Most cases, like 75 to 80%, are detected at later stages. And at that point, the survival rate really like it's really out of whack. So stage one, it's a 90% survival rate, like the 5-year survival rate is at 90%, which is pretty good. But for later stages, for advanced stages, it drops to like 50%. So like 50% of people, of the majority, because the majority of cases are detected later, you know, these rates haven't changed in the last 50 years.
Mhm.
A lot of it is because not enough funding is going towards this research, and it's a cancer that, there's no immunotherapy for it, for example, because again, you need research to develop those tools. Um, so yeah, I feel like we're at a point where, we're in 2024, we have self-driving cars and AI and everything. So I feel like we're at that cusp of technology where I feel like we're coming close to, honestly, it's a big thing to say, but eradicating cancer, or at least turning it into a more of a chronic manageable disease, like diabetes or something, where okay, you have it, but you manage it and you live your life. And but to do that, we need to raise awareness for all these other cancers too that are a bit, they're rarer, but like it's not someone's fault that they got that kind of cancer, and not, something that has more research, for example. So yeah, so that's kind of um my wish for ovarian cancer, and I hope more research and funding goes towards it so that we can develop more tools and really change those stats, and make it a easier to survive disease.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think, like you said, we're at a point where the technology and the science and the innovation is so far ahead, but there are so many cancers that are not as well understood, and we won't understand them until we put the funding and the research
Yeah.
into it.
Mhm.
And, especially in the, you know, minus the breast cancer, I think the women's cancers are very poorly understood. And we
Mhm.
we we really do need to spend the time and the money and the resources and put the infrastructure in place where we're not getting these women in a late stage diagnosis. We're able to
Yeah.
diagnose them much earlier.
Yeah.
And do you volunteer? Do you work with any of the advocacy groups?
Yeah, so I have been involved with Ovarian Cancer Canada. I'm part of their patient partner and research program, which is great because it forces the researcher and the clinical research side to take into account the patient experience. And so a lot of the grants that Ovarian Cancer Canada gives out, it's with the condition that a patient partner will be involved, which is awesome. Because the goal shouldn't be like to get rid of cancer. It's also to make sure that there's a quality of life. So if you get rid of someone's cancer but they go completely blind, like
Yeah.
it's like, yes, they're alive, but their quality of life has significantly like changed.
And that
um
will depend on patient to patient too, right? Some patient might
yeah,
say, yes, I'm totally okay with being blind and not having cancer, whereas some
right.
others might not be okay with that.
Right. And but the ideal situation is, can we consider like the holistic, like cure the disease and ensure that there's a quality of life? Because again, like we are saying before, if we're able to make our lives so comfortable that we're able to sit in a car that drives itself, whereas we can all drive ourselves. So it's like, it's just like the prioritization of like where the comfort should go. Like,
Yeah,
that shouldn't make the life of patients more comfortable. We
yeah,
can all drive our cars ourselves, you
yeah.
know.
Um,
So I'm just joking, but like I'm just trying to say, like, I feel like we're at a point where we could come to that place where we can create that balance between getting rid of the cancer, but also creating a good quality of life. I'm also involved with the Quebec Cancer Coalition, as they have a patient partner committee, so I'm on that committee as well. And whenever I can, I like to do things like this with you and folks like you who work for organizations like this, and just share my story with the Canadian Cancer Society. And I think I've done a few things like this with them as well. So yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I know that you're active on social media. So do you connect with other women
Oh
who've been
yeah, I'm actually really surprised because, so here's the thing. When I was diagnosed, I wasn't sure like how much of it I wanted to share online, because it's like you said, it's a gynecological cancer, like it's TMI maybe and all that. So, but I don't know. At one point, I was like, I can't keep this all in. Like this is too much weight to bear alone. And so I decided to share, but I created like a separate account. I made a TikTok because I was like, oh, nobody I know is really on TikTok. Like it's a kids platform. But I was really surprised because as I started to post, first of all, I did not expect there to be like a community being created on TikTok because I never saw TikTok as that kind of platform. But really, it does do that because the type of content I was posting, it attracted, you know, other people posting that type of content, and so that's how like you end up commenting on each other's posts, and that kind of really it really builds that community. So like I have like a bunch of friends that I'm following, and they're following me, and it's not just ovarian cancer; it's all types of cancers, but mostly women. So it's a lot of breast cancer and stuff like that. But it's been amazing, honestly, like to be able to share notes, and sometimes we do lives, and we kind of we're there for each other, and it's like it's a rare community that that it's a bunch of people that can understand your experience, and sometimes it's hard to make someone else understand like what you're really going through. Like for example, we often hear things like, "Oh, you're so brave and you're so this and you're so that." And at first for me, I needed to hear that like in the beginning of this journey because I needed that fuel to be like, "Yeah, I can get through this. I can do this." But now that I'm on the other side of it and I still hear that, I'm like, "No, not really." Like it makes me realize like I don't feel brave anymore in the sense that like now that I'm done treatment, I'm in like that recovery phase where because I'm not in survival mode anymore, now it's like my body has time to like let go of that like adrenaline, and now it's like processing like, oh my God, what just happened? And so I don't feel strong or brave. I feel like crying and I feel like breaking down. And I think it's an important part of the healing. Like I need to have those moments to get it out of my system and not like suppress it. But because I keep hearing that you're so brave, it sometimes pushes it down. It's like, "No, but I'm brave. But no, I'm brave." So then it's like and that's
Oh,
not healthy. It's like, "No, I don't this is not the time to be brave or health or whatever. It's time to, like, cry it out, let it out of your system, let it go, and, like, grieve, that my life changed, I'm not the same person anymore. I'm like I feel like I have a new body, but with the memories of the old one, so there's a lot to grieve, and and it's okay, and it's part of the process." And I was telling someone, like, it's the best way to explain it is like if I was, if I paid someone, I said, I want to go skydiving and I jumped out of a plane and I knew what I was doing, like call me brave and then because I made that choice. But this is me like it's like I was kidnapped in the middle of the night, someone put me on the plane and pushed me off. Like that's what this is like. Like I did not choose this, you
that's
know?
such a great analogy.
Yeah, I was like, I just woke up one day and I was like falling, and I'm just like, oh, trying to fly and do whatever I can and see if I have a parachute on and like and hoping that I won't like hit the ground. So it's is it brave or is it just me trying to survive?
Yeah.
But to someone else, they're seeing like a skydiver and they're like, wow, look at that person, they're so brave, and I get that, but for those who are with me on this plane, we're shoved off. We're like, I was put in this situation. I didn't choose the situation, but and it's hard to have these conversations because we also know that like our friends and family, they mean well when they're saying that, and it's awkward. They don't know what to say. They're trying to encourage us to keep pushing, and I totally get that. But um, that's why I feel like it's so important to connect with someone that's going through something similar, even if it's not the same cancer or the same stage or whatever. It's just there's certain things that you can relate to and understand that feeling of I just feel like existing. I don't want all this pressure to be a hero. And
Yeah.
sometimes I do. Sometimes I need that like lift because I need to go through surgery or whatever and I need to feel like I can do this. But other times I just want to sit down and like be alone and just cry it out like. And that's okay too. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of ups and downs. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that's really important. And a lot of people make the list of things not to say to people who are living with cancer or people who've had cancer. And I think the way that you articulated it so well. So, um,
Mhm.
if you're listening, don't tell the people you know who have cancer that they're so brave unless you see that they need to be uplifted in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think like you hit that, like right on like the nail on the head because I feel like the recurring theme in our conversation is meet people where they're at. Whether you're a professional, a friend, whoever you're at, meet people where they're at is like the recurring theme of what I've observed from this experience. It's like, often like you said just said too, we often hear what not to say. And so sometimes you're like, well, what should we say? And I'm like, that's a really interesting question because what I want you to say is not the same as somebody else who's going through this. It's going to be an individual experience. So there is no one size fits all experience. And a lot of the things that other people might say, like, oh, don't say this, don't say that, don't say that. It's not necessarily true. Some of those things I actually liked hearing them. Like I said, I liked hearing the you're brave and stuff in the beginning
Mm.
when I first got diagnosed because I needed to feel that I can get over this and I can come out of this. But right now, do I need to hear it? Not necessarily. Like, whereas now I just maybe need someone to just listen to me. It's like, listen to me vent it and listen to me talk about how, oh my gosh, I'm realizing what just happened. And so it's like it's dynamic, it's complex and it's a moving target and there's no like one size fits all answer. So I think instead of feeling awkward, the best thing to do is just to one, just if you know your friend, you know them already. So use that, like use the fact that you know something about your friend and how they are and how you can support them. You already know it. So like if your friend doesn't like to cook and they're going through this, well, maybe make them a meal because they're gonna not like it even more right now because they're too busy thinking of other stuff. So it's like I think it's about bringing this a solution rather than even asking. So it's like, hey, I can do this for my friend and let me offer and see if they're willing to receive it. Because that's the other thing too. Sometimes people be like, "What can I do for you?" And that puts so much burden on the person that's already going through this, and they're like, "I don't know." We often say nothing because we're like, "That's such a big question." Like, I don't know what to ask you. One, because I don't want to be a burden to you, and two, because I don't know. I have so much on my mind. Like, I don't know what you can do for me. Like, I don't know if I ask this, is it too much, too little? So I'd rather just say nothing. I'm fine, but I'm not fine, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a mix of your friend, you probably know what they need from like outside of the cancer context. And you also know what you are good at as a person. And if you're a great cook, like make them a meal and offer it to them, instead of asking, like, can I make you a meal? So I would word it like this. I'd be like, hey, I was thinking of making you something. What would you like? What would you like to eat? So you already are kind of saying, I'm making something for you. I just want you to tell me what your favorite meal is. I've already committed to making it for you. So you're not seen as a like so the receiving person, the cancer patient isn't like, oh gosh, now I have to tell them what to do and all this. It's like they already told me what they're doing. I just have to decide what I'd like. So yeah.
Thank you, Elvina. Thank you for sharing all of that. It was such a wonderful conversation. I do, do you, if you wanted to share your TikTok and your Instagram handle for people to
Sure.
connect with you, I will put it in the description.
Yeah, that would be great.
And if you want to say it as well.
Yeah, sure. So on TikTok, I'm at OC Warrior Queen, and on Instagram, just Coach Alvina, because I do coaching as well. But right now, I'm not really. It's more about my cancer journey right now. But yeah, those are the two main places where I'm online.
Perfect. Thank you, Elvina. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you.